Hi, everyone. We'd like to welcome you to the first of a series of webinars called Your Health Today and Tomorrow. And in this webinar series, we talk about key issues here in the Western Pacific and beyond. I'd like to welcome all of you who are with us on the Zoom, those of you who are live streaming, and those of you who are watching on the playback. We're going to start with a message from our regional director, Dr. Saiya Mao Pukala.
Distinguished speakers, colleagues, and viewers from across the Western Pacific region. Greetings from Manila, and welcome to our webinar series on the future of health. Since the beginning of my term as regional director, I have been reminded of the dynamic and rapidly changing nature of the Western Pacific region. It stands as one of the most diverse regions in terms of population, landmass, and economies, presenting a myriad of health challenges and opportunities both now and in the future. We must anticipate changes and critically assess what might shape the future of health, well-being, and health system in the region. By understanding the possible futures, we can mitigate risk while seizing opportunities to achieve our vision of better health for all. In other words, we can realize our preferred health futures. In the spirit of coming together to contribute ideas, experiences, and skills, in the same way as adding our unique threads to a woven mat, I invite you to join us in imagining the futures we aspire to. So together, let's chat about your health, now and tomorrow. Over a series of discussions, we will explore key aspects of our future and help shape WHO priorities for the Western Pacific region in the years ahead. We'll delve into the drivers of non-communicable diseases, explore the building blocks of climate-ready and responsive health system, discuss pandemic preparedness, and examine the role of health technologies in addressing health inequities. We want everyone from different countries and walks of life to be part of this important conversation. So please come with us in our journey to improve health and save lives. Let's work towards a future where no one is left behind, worried about what the future holds for their health or the health of the people they love. Your insights, perspectives, and active participation are the strands that will weave the myth of our shared health future. Thank you very much.
Today, we're chatting about the leading causes of death in many parts of the world. We talk about the root causes of non-communicable diseases that includes diabetes, hypertension, heart disease, strokes, cancers, and many things that affect both young people and older people. And we have two very interesting and wonderful guests with us today who are going to talk about health today and tomorrow. But before we start, my name is Susie Mercado. I'm the Director for Program Management of the World Health Organization in the Western Pacific region. And to my left is Dr. Ngande Wanga. She is the head of the WHO Collaborating Center on Non-Communicable Disease Prevention in Fiji and is an expert in public health, obesity prevention, community engagement, and non-communicable disease prevention and control in the whole Western Pacific region. And she's here for a meeting, so we were able to steal her from our meeting to be with us today. We've also got Ms. Sarah Damore, who is a consultant at the World Health Organization Regional Office for the Western Pacific. She's got a background in biology and over a decade of experience in health education, research, and prevention of non-communicable diseases. We'll also have later on a chef, Robert Oliver, who is the executive director and founder of the Pacific Island Food Revolution, who will join us, and he will share his grassroots experience from a very interesting program called the Pacific Island Food Revolution, which is actually a reality show that centers on how people can cook food that's indigenous and that's culturally appropriate in the Pacific. So before we proceed, we've got some housekeeping. This is an interactive session. For those of you who will be joining on Zoom, we will be sharing prompts via the chat. Please share your insights with us. We want to know what you think. Also, be great if you can say where you're watching from. For those of you who are live streaming, do post on the comment section, and we'll try to capture that so that we can have voices both from the Zoom and from the live stream. And towards the end of the session, we will have a question and answer portion. Those of you who are joining on Zoom, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen to ask your questions. So we start out now and talk about how we got to a point where the leading causes of death and disability are non-communicable diseases. And we've been talking about this for decades. And I don't know if we can say that we have gone ahead of the curve. I don't think we have. I think it's a huge issue in the Pacific and in Asia. And so we want to talk about how we got there and what drove this epidemic of non-communicable diseases that has resulted in a lot of premature mortality. So people dying younger or being disabled younger and not being able to live full lives as our ancestors used to do. So let's talk first to Dr. Wanga, who has been working on the ground on this for a long, long time. And I think maybe let's listen to what your thoughts are on how we got to this point. Why is non-communicable disease our biggest challenge now when it comes to the health of our people?
Thank you. So if we look back, the main four NCDs, which are diabetes, cardiovascular diseases, cancers, and chronic respiratory diseases, they account to 87% of all deaths in the Western Pacific region. I just want to bring this into the foresight so that we see the extent of the problem. And NCDs is a result of a lifelong interaction between genes or genetics, environment, and behavior. So having said that, the Ministry of Health alone cannot address NCDs. It needs interaction, it needs the collaboration to collaborate with other non-health sectors, because over 80% or 78% of other sectors contribute to addressing NCD. So, and it's sad to mention that we are not on track in reducing NCDs in the Western Pacific region. And the Republic of Korea is the only country that has reached that stage. So with the rest of the countries, some countries are even getting worse, and NCDs is really the biggest issue with them. So just looking back at the social determinants of health, these are the ones that influence the way we behave. So it's the main behavioral risk factors, which includes healthy eating, physical inactivity, tobacco smoking, and continuing on the fourth one. So these ones, it really shape the way we are doing things on a daily basis. But we are already facing the negative impact of the commercial determinants of health. So that in itself is something that does not contribute to a healthy environment. Let me stop here. Thank you.
Yeah, you mentioned social determinants of health. I mean, back in the day when we were starting in public health, people thought about bacteria, viruses, and looking for vaccines. And that was the way to protect the population. But now we're looking at, you have mentioned behavior, and you've talked about eating, and you've talked about the environment. So if we think about what we need to modify or change in relation to the environment, what in particular would be most important?
I would think that policy is the most important thing that regulate the environment, and it'll help contribute to having good choices, healthier choices, especially with the children, especially with children, they look up at what they see. Apart from the role model that we have at home, what the parents do, they also do. So what mom eats or what mom prepares on the plate, and that's what they eat. But you see, the environment determines the way we eat. It also influences what we eat and how we behave.
Yeah, I mean, there are lots of parents who tell their kids to eat vegetables, but they don't eat vegetables themselves, right? Or they eat a lot of processed food. I mean, we're talking about lifestyle and families and how choices are made. But I guess the other part of the problem is healthier food that's fresh or food that's not processed. It's quite expensive, isn't it? It's not accessible for ordinary people. And we do know that the NCD epidemic does in fact impact on people who have less in life. So when we are thinking about families and what kind of messages we can share to the audience who are watching us today in relation to the family, what are the key things we have to share for families?
One of the things is the cultural preferences. People in olden days, we eat fresh foods and vegetables from the farm. And we go to the farm and collect it ourselves. We go and fish and get it, cook it. So it's all fresh. But the preference nowadays, because of a fast lifestyle that we're in, a lot of people prefer processed foods, and it's easier to just get hold of something in the supermarket without really looking at the food labels, what it contains. But it's easier to cook. That's what the slogan says with some of the foods that they have.
Yeah, so it's convenience. I mean, sometimes I think about how do you communicate, eat less salt, eat less sugar, avoid trans fats. It's very difficult to communicate that to ordinary people. And maybe, and I'm gonna ask our other guest, Sarah, in a bit about this, but maybe we have to just make it simpler, because when we start talking about read the label, in all honesty, right, when you go to the supermarket or if you're buying anywhere, you don't have time to read the label. You just go with, and when it says easy, healthy, something, right, then you believe it and you say, okay, this is probably good for me. So I don't know, what do you think of messaging around just avoiding processed food and eating more fresh food? What do you think of that?
Yeah, the message needs to be simple, realistic, so that there is a buy-in to the current generation. Because the way we are going on with our daily lifestyle, like I said, the environment. So when
Yeah.
we tell people to plant your own vegetables on your backyard, do they have that?
Yeah.
So it's again the accessibility. So it may be available, but it's accessibility to those pieces of land so that they would be able to at least plant some of the vegetables that they can quickly reach and add on to their food that they are preparing.
Yeah, I think the idea of adding on something fresh to what you're eating, even if some of the food you're eating is processed, is a good idea, because at least you're not eating all processed food. I mean, the other thing is when we think about carbohydrate intake, um, in our societies today, like here in the Philippines, people were used to eating root crops, so sweet potatoes and so on. And I think in Fiji it's the same, right?
We have a lot of food crops. We have the dalo, the cassava. This is on the Pacific. We also have kumala, but a lot of people prefer rice.
Yeah.
Maybe because it's easy to prepare, but it's again goes to the food preferences.
Right. And the food preferences, of course, are driven by commercial,
Yes.
like commercial forces and factors. Okay, we're going to ask Sarah. So, Sarah, when we talk about, I mean, we've been talking about what's been going on in a previous generation, and you're now at the helm of your work. Do you think younger people are more aware or more concerned about what they eat, or they're not?
I hope that they are. I do know that we have more availability of food than we've ever had before. So I think almost as a byproduct of that, people are more aware because we have more choices. And maybe previously you ate what was put in front of you. And I
Right.
think this also has driven cultures of eating a lot, especially in special family moments. So I think we have to be very culture specific. I think that, yes, my generation is conscious of what they're eating. I don't think that that means that they are making healthier choices. Again, I'm making a big generalization because, as you said, we're also going up against a huge force and really genius marketing on
Yes.
on behalf of the food companies, where it's very difficult to determine what's healthy and what's not. And I think the concept itself of eating fresher foods, eliminating processed foods, or eating fewer processed foods is quite simple. But when you go into the actual doing it, what's the culture? Are you coming out of school and there's a convenience store right there and all the cool kids are there and they're eating chips and candy? Of course you're going to go with your culture. So I think we have to work from both ends. We have to work from the culture side, but we also have to work from the policy side so that every time you turn a corner, you're not bombarded both with unhealthy, cheap foods and also with marketing that makes them very, very attractive.
Right. So the marketing part of it is a factor, and I think we were talking a little bit about. You had mentioned a little bit about how family influences are also important, but I guess nowadays, in terms of the environment of young people, because of all the devices, all of the online access to information, maybe family influence is less, or do we think that the family still has a big role to play in making sure that people are eating the right things?
I think both. I think we also have to recognize that sometimes a person's community is very obviously their surroundings, maybe their family, their school, their environment. Sometimes a person's community is online, and sometimes
Yes.
it's both. So I think we also can't ignore the immense, really like the inundation of diet information that comes from sources like TikTok or YouTube. And so we also need to recognize that we have to find a way to filter that information. And have to find a way, by filter, I mean, make it known what information is accurate and what information is just somebody looking for attention.
So how do you think we're going to do that?
Yes,
What do you think?
education starts from home. We can start with the young ones.
Yeah.
You know, what we provide them to eat.
Yeah.
And this education need to be complemented by what they learn in school. So, you know, again, the environment plays an important role. Like Sarah said, when children goes into their schools, before they reach their school, there'll always be hawkers on the roadside.
Right.
And that's in itself is a big issue because they tend, you know, they will bring spending money from home. And of course, that's where they use the money for.
Right. Yeah, I mean, okay, let's zero in on obesity as a risk factor for non-communicable disease. When I look at the data on obesity, a lot of the obesity really starts below the age of 5. So that's where it starts. It's like it doesn't happen when you're 15. It starts from the home, maybe from the point of weaning if there is breastfeeding, and sometimes there's no breastfeeding. But in the community, what do you see as the driver? So what makes obesity more common now, especially among very young children?
And I guess I go back to what's been provided at home. Again, the policy plays an important role. You know, we've got the ones that regulate what they eat in school, as well as starting from below 5. You know what the milk supplement. So
Right.
it's if you go to the supermarket nowadays, you may not be able to find it, but before it is there. It's been rescinded, is I'm talking about in Fiji. So these are the kind of things that it's useful for working mothers, but you know, there are certain age or certain age groups that they needed to be careful on what they provided or what they give to their children that supplements the breasts.
Yeah, so the young kids, I mean, you know, I grew up and raised my kids on mashing bananas and papayas and sweet potato and so on. But as you say, right, if you're a working mom, then you see something in the supermarket and you buy it, and that's what you're going to feed your baby. What do you think? How do you think young mothers are looking at this situation?
I think it's a matter of convenience, and I actually want us to even step back and recognize that this actually starts when a woman is pregnant.
Okay, good.
Yes,
Yeah.
and that being obese while pregnant increases your risk of miscarriage, of preeclampsia, which is hypertension while you're pregnant, and of other really, really serious pregnancy conditions. And if you are a baby born to an obese mother, you are more likely to suffer from metabolic conditions. So there are very likely some epigenetic factors that are happening. That's our protective mechanism as a species. So that's, you know, kind of an amazing factor of our biology, but in our current environment where we're inundated with nutrients and our bodies are built for conservation, it becomes very difficult. So to answer your question, I think for young mothers, yes, it's convenience. I think it's also the marketing. And it's really the culture. We don't have a culture in a lot of places. I don't want to generalize the entire region, which we know is very diverse, of people sitting around and making food all day, right? Our culture has shifted very rapidly over the past few decades. People are working more often. They're working in cities. They're leaving maybe ancestral plots of land where they used to spend a lot of time outside growing things, which is also a way of getting physical activity. So we have less physical activity, less time outside, honestly, even less difficult to measure, but just an appreciation of growing something that comes out of the ground and then eating it. I think we've really lost touch. Again, a large generalization, but I think there is a trend of not really recognizing that you become what you eat.
So you're talking about a disconnect between human beings and the environment. Didn't we learn something from COVID that helps us here? Because at some point during COVID, and I don't know what your experience was, people couldn't leave home and they had to be with their families. And I know a lot of people who went into planting stuff and understanding and realizing that they actually have the ability to grow food, you know, pleasantly surprised. So it's not like we can't do it, but how can we enable it? So I spent a little time in Hawaii where I was working on food security. And one of the things that I learned there was how to work with aquaponics, how to raise vegetables over water. And I think in places where you don't have a lot of agricultural land, or we know, I mean, my grandmother taught me to get a stalk of sweet potato, the leaf, and stick it in the ground. And after a couple of weeks, you have vegetables, right? So I'm wondering whether we aren't in public health, we aren't going enough into, we haven't done enough into helping families look at their experience and say, hey, you can actually do this. We kind of say, hey, that's too difficult to do. But what we need to do is probably enable it. I mean, the simple act of growing green onions, that's not difficult. You cut the thing, you put it in the soil, and you've got your green onions after a week. So I don't know if I'm being idealistic, or is it possible that we can make growing food at home an easier thing for families? What do you think?
Well, going back to COVID has taught us lots of lessons. We tend to realize the richness that we have in our own villages, in our own homes, because when there's a disconnect with, especially in working environment, people go back and look for the piece of land that they have turned their back.
Yeah.
And that is the one that, that feeds them. And they go back to plant and they realize that, oh, we are so rich. We have the land here.
Yes.
So it goes back to what they have left several years ago. So it's there. It's just a mental attitude that they have.
But we can go back to that.
Yeah.
It's like we know how to do that, right? Okay, so how about the current generation? Do you think there is a possibility or there is interest in becoming more engaged with your environment by planting food?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Yes.
Tell us how.
Yes, I do. I think that what happened is now we're seeing the side effects of our societal change. So I don't think we should blame generations which have been suffering from obesity now, which I would say the generation before me, maybe the generation right before that is really the first generations that started to struggle with obesity. So I think now this generation is seeing, okay, whatever they were doing was not working, right? Let's try to see what we can change. And I think you're right that COVID did have a big impact of
Yep.
people, you're stuck. So if you have the privilege of having a green space where you can grow something, if you don't, maybe you have the privilege of having a space in your home where you can grow some food, even just a very small act of, like you said, right? You can just chop the green onions and put it even in water and it will grow in a windowsill. I think
Absolutely.
it's enough.
Absolutely. I mean, people rediscovered that during COVID, that you don't need a lot of land to plant. You can actually plant in a box. But now that there's no COVID, we've gone back to, oh, let's just go buy the thing, right? It's easier. So I think there is an element of rediscovering our humanity in relation to our relationship to the soil or in relation to producing food. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, that's correct. Because we tend to realize the, like I said, the potentials that we have, but we are not making full use of it. So
Yes.
it's really time to get back to our roots. We go back to the land that we have, thought at one stage that it's not helping us, and make use of it. So we are saying that healthy food is expensive, of course, because we are depending on what's being sold in the supermarket. But if we bring back the thoughts of the idea of having to plant in the small piece of land that you have, whether you use containers or
Water. Yeah.
we can still have vegetables available at home, very accessible.
Yeah, I like that. I like the idea of going back to your roots. I mean, literally and figuratively, that there is a part of us that knows how to do this, that knows what to do. But I guess, and I'm wondering in public health if we have not exhausted that ability of families to do that, or we have not exhausted our role in enabling it, because we keep on talking about it. Eat healthy, have more healthy choices available, policies, etc. But if you go back to the roots, you go back to culture, you go back to heritage, there is I don't want to say it's in the DNA. You're the experienced one in that one, right? But there is potential to address obesity using that particular perspective. Okay, so let's go to the $10 billion question. If I gave you $10 billion each, right, to do something to change the NCD epidemic curve, what would you spend it on? You want to start?
I can start, yes. I would have a two-pronged approach. I would go bottom up and top down. And I'm a biology person, so of course I have my own selective bias to go with biology. I would do a really extensive education campaign, and I would start with young kids and hope that there's also an ability, maybe you build it into the system, of the school becoming a place that's like a community hub. Maybe the school is even the place that's growing things. But a really back to the roots type of education program that is well-funded, that runs, that is sustainable, but also with a top-down approach where we have policy so that when people learn about what's healthy, they can actually go into the environment and make those healthy choices.
So you think we should have children planting in the schools?
Yes, absolutely.
I agree with you.
Dirt on the fingers,
Yeah.
the microbiome.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And learning how to cook.
Yeah, cook. Yes. Because I think we're educating a generation that's disconnected from, not only from other people, but from the soil, from the land. So I think, yeah, that'd be great. So unfortunately, I don't have 10 billion for you. So. Anyway, Dr. Ngande.
Yes. So to me, we need to realize that we are not alone. we have our partners, collaborating partners, Ministry of Agriculture is there, they'll be
Yeah.
able to provide seedlings if you need it. The Ministry of Women are there, they would come in to do some cooking demonstration if needed. And there are ways of working around them. So don't feel that you're alone. You have to reach out. And even in the community structures, these are very cheap things that, you advocate using the faith-based organizations, the
Correct.
community groups, and it's very important to empower people so that they would empower others.
Okay, so we don't have 20 billion for you. So I'm going to reverse the question. Why aren't we doing this? Why aren't we doing what you want to do and what you would like to do?
I
There you
think,
go, Sarah.
yeah, you can see I'm bubbling over. It is just not a priority. I think we have not done enough to really put the emphasis on the impact of diet and environment on health. I think we've taken it as okay, we all have a right to make our decisions and people know how to make choices that are best for them. And that is generally true. But now we've come up against an environment that is so oppressively obesogenic that it's no longer the case.
Yeah, I like the way you're describing that it's oppressive because it's like it's so difficult to do things differently. But there's got to be hope somewhere. Okay, so we're gonna go to Dr. Wanga. What's
Okay.
keeping us from doing what you just said we need to do?
Yes, I think we are doing it to some extent, but we need to be looking beyond that. How can we scale up? How can we strengthen the existing strategies that we are working on? If we are not doing enough, we are not inclusive, we are not using the youth to speak up for themselves. If we are not using the mothers to to help the others who may not know how to cook better noodles if they have the only noodles that they have, or whatever small tin fish that they have. There are organizations that are there. Maybe they are not aware, but this is where advocacy needs to come in.
Mhm.
We needed to reach out to the unreached and get them to be involved, be inclusive. And I guess, climate change is a big issue now. So how
Yeah.
can we tap onto this to help, with mothers, with young people, with school children, come out of their own self and be part of the decision-making process.
So we're really talking here about some kind of community-based kind of movement, right? That's not, I mean, this is, I understand what you're saying about policy, right? But at the end of the day, if you have a very oppressive environment in terms of not having choices, then what we need to do is work with people on the ground and slowly build that up. Now, is that possible? Can we do this?
I agree, it's possible. Anything's
Okay.
possible. It's just networking, how you network, especially, for example, in developing policies. We are now reviewing some of the policies together with the Ministry of Health. And it's interesting that the policies were developed how many years back, and we realize that there are some gaps that needs to be included. So, talking to people who are there to assist you. So I find it very interesting to always go back and review things. We've got certain indicators that you have to refer to so that we can see the trend. Where did we go wrong and how can we improve and way forward?
Right. And Sarah, if we talk about communities of the youth, what are we actually talking about? I mean, I can understand, okay, you work in a community, in a village with mothers, with traditional leaders, etc. But a lot of young people aren't there. So what's the community of youth that we need to reach, and what are the best ways to communicate with them?
I think we do need to work in our online channels. I think we know what sources people are going to. We can track everything about that. And so I think, and people actually, I should say, are already looking to internet sources for information
Right.
about diet and health, any type of information that you could want. So I think we should tap into that instead of trying to create a new platform or create a new space, even though it would be nice for us to create some sort of physical space for people to be. I think we should utilize what people are already doing and really work through the online channels to make sure that we have a place where there's, I like that we're talking about pushing people and how you said, we're not doing enough with our families. I think you're right. And I think this can be a place where we can give that push to say, you can do it.
Yeah.
It's not that hard. Depending on your context, there is a way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, that's always a good way of starting out a conversation in relation to solving a public health problem. It's like, are we doing enough, and are we doing enough together? And you've mentioned agriculture, you're mentioning online communities and so on. And so that means that in our work in public health, we have to start rethinking how we influence communities, families, and society as a whole. Anyway, one of the ways we can influence what people eat, as you said, is learning how to cook. And I think that's a very interesting approach to the NCD epidemic, because when people know how to cook, then they learn how to market, and they learn how to choose, and they learn what their options are. But unfortunately, cooking is not given that much. People will open a can and put it in, or heat it up, and then, or buy something that's baked or something, and it's done. But anyway, we have a very special guest. We've got a chef who's going to talk to us about a reality show that he has produced in the Pacific. And the reality show is about, you guys watch Master Chef or Iron Chef, or these shows where you have all these chefs who come out and they say, okay, we're going to open it, and this is your special ingredient for the day, right? So in his program, he asks communities to use the food that's available in the village and to create a dish that's nutritious, easy to make, and delicious. So we're going to have Robert Oliver in a while, but I think we have a video that we're going to show about the Sanma food revolution. So maybe we can cue that.
In Pacific Island Food Revolution Vanuatu, two of our contestants struck up a friendship that has become a local food revolution. What happened next is magic. Sanma Food Revolution was born. Sanma Food Revolution is like a cooking roadshow. They go into the communities and custom villages, making real change at a grassroots level. You see, a food revolution is a woman's revolution. It's about going back to local food.
Sanma Food Revolution goes out in our communities and help our people to change what they've had in their kitchen. Train them to cook our own local food into something that our kids would love it, and even as parents. There's lots of mamas and papas that they know how to cook already. It's a very great team. We work very well together. The change that I'd like to give to our village people. Okay, now am I ready? Ready start happen na pa imikarem. It helps them to change their food in their homes, and it helps them to stay healthy, and they don't spend much. Just do their food with what they have in the garden. Please, one more, last one.
Our people are beginning to realize that, yes, definitely we have to go back to our local food, because that is the answer to the NCD crisis that is happening in our country at this point in time. Dr. Basil Leodoro is such an asset to this whole movement because of the fact that he's a doctor. And also in our society, our people, they look up to what the doctor says. So it is really powerful in the way that he's leading this revolution and everybody's listening to him. And with him at the forefront of this revolution, we know that we can achieve a great deal. I truly love Sanma Island Food Revolution. We are mothers, we are sisters, and we are also great leaders. And we really care for our people.
My hope is to move out to the other.
That's making me hungry. Okay, so we are now joined by Robert Oliver. Robert, are you there?
Yes, hey Susie, good to see you.
Hey, nice to see you again.
Thanks for having me.
So there you go. Okay. So Robert, we have here Sarah and Dr. Wanga. Dr. Wanga is from Fiji and Sarah's from the United States. They're both here for a non-communicable disease meeting. So tell us a little, Robert, about how you got into this. You're a chef, but you have gone into public health. So tell us about that.
Actually, I think I'm working off a presentation. Is that right? And I'm going to
Go ahead.
give you an expo. I think, can someone pull up my slideshow, please?
Okay, so we've got a slideshow. Yeah.
Yeah, because I've got video in there, Susie, that you've seen before, and it means I
No,
don't
but
know
we want
exactly.
more people to see it, Robert. Go
Great.
ahead. Go ahead.
Is someone from that end? Yes, great. Thank you. Going to slideshow. So I'm going to tell you a little about Pacific Island Food Revolution. You can go to the next slide, please. Next slide. And you can hit, that's right, one more click, one more click, one more click. You all know these numbers. The NCD crisis in the Pacific is at epidemic levels. I'm sure the doctor from Fiji can update these numbers. They're a little old now, but the point is that there's an epidemic of NCDs in the Pacific. Next slide, please. This is new. I grew up in Fiji, and I remember when I was a kid, there was very low numbers of diabetes. People were very fit. One more click on that slide, please. And what anyone who's lived in the Pacific will have seen there's been a change in the way people eat over the last 30, 40 years, going from basically eating from the market and eating Italke and Fijian food, like wholesome local food, and the same applies for every Pacific island, to eating processed food and highly marketed junk food, basically. And that's been the primary shift in the way that people are eating. But the opportunity is still sitting in the Pacific, because there's still amazing food in every Pacific backyard. There's still great farmers, and the grandmothers still know these recipes. So the question that I put to myself was, well, how do I revive and restore and bring into the modern era a fantastic traditional food system? Next slide, please. There's a big tie-in with climate change. The same food that's good for people is also good for the planet. There's lots of evidence that local crops, not importing foods and giving food miles to it, local crops and the traditional food system is also a climate change mitigation measure and builds resilience. And as an observation, is that many people feel powerless about climate change. The climate change, along with NCDs in the Pacific, is the big theme and the big dread that we all carry. And you know, there's a feeling that government and institutions are going to fix it, and people at the grassroots level can feel powerless. Next slide, please. So this is a whole systems approach, and this is a quote from Sir Colin Tukuitonga, who's also on my board. I know works with you guys. In order to deal with these threats, profound changes need to be applied to the Pacific food system. Everyone working together. More resilient food systems need to be created. I would say need to be revived. Next slide, please. We don't need to invent anything. We just need to restore and revamp for the modern era local food systems that have served Pacific Islands well for thousands of years. Next slide, please. So this is how Pacific Island Food Revolution came about. Now, I've got like one of those kind of chef backgrounds where I was on the big shows, and I was a judge on my kitchen rules. And which is one of those big reality cooking competition shows. And I actually said to my agent when I was offered the role, I said, I don't do trashy TV because I thought this reality was just trashy. And then when I was on the show and I saw the effect it had and everyone was cooking and talking about food, I was like, I love trashy TV. And I also noticed that everyone in the Pacific was watching the shows. And I thought to myself, this is really something that could be really effective. And so the idea of Pacific Island Food Revolution came around. I reached out to a group of friends in Fiji, Samoa, Vanuatu, Tonga. You'll probably have seen these faces. The one in the middle, you may not have seen him with his shirt on. That's Peter Tawhatawhua, the Tongan Olympian. And we formed Pacific Island Food Revolution with all these guys in each of the islands. So next slide, please. We're going to get a word from them. And there's a video here. Thank you.
Vinaka. My name is Bertrand Jang, and I am the new host for Pacific Island Food Revolution for Fiji. Now, we all know that our original Pacific cuisine is delicious and nutritious. So Pacific Island Food Revolution is about the restoration of Pacific cuisine, suited for these modern times.
Malo Lele, I am Fololanika, the co-host for the Kingdom of Tonga. We in the Pacific love visual mediums. So TV is the perfect way to get into people's homes and lives with this positive cultural message. Plus, I get to look pretty, dress up, and smile for the camera.
Hello everyone. My name is Fatausi Mackenzie Reo, co-host for the beautiful islands of Vanuatu. Pacific Island Food Revolution is a solution to a Pacific problem. We do not need anything from outside to fix this. We have the traditional knowledge and our food behind us to guide us. You see, non-communicable diseases is not just government business. Through food, non-communicable diseases is everyone's business. And you know what? We can do this.
Talafalava, this is Dora Rossi, the co-host for beautiful Samoa. Hey, everybody everywhere is talking about Pacific Island Food Revolution and about food. Pacific Island Food Revolution is something people want to be a part of because, you see, it is not just a TV show, it's a social movement. It really is a revolution.
Next slide, please. Yeah, thank you. A couple of clicks there. So next, yeah, you can click 2 more times. Yeah, next to the television, we take a lot of the content and then we reformat it for social media. So we've reached 11.2 million people on Facebook alone in a population of 12 million, et cetera, et cetera. There are also radio shows themed around the cooking show that go to the outer islands in their own local languages. Next slide, please. It plays all over the world. We get about 5 million viewers a week in the Pacific, so it's going to every Pacific home. We've had the good luck of having the Prime Minister of Samoa as a special guest, the President of Fiji, and one of my regular co-hosts is the Princess Royal of Tonga. And they've given the whole movement massive credibility. Next slide, please. This is one of the things that emerged out of Pacific Island Food Revolution. Go ahead, play the video.
Pacific Kids Food Revolution!
So this is a YouTube series we put together with Pacific Kids. 6 videos that they cooked. They were doing the cooking, and then we thought they were just going to go on YouTube, but it's been playing on mainstream TV all through the Pacific as well. Of course, all the young kids have become influencers, and we found that a lot of our fan base are 20 and below. They just really love the show. And I guess the whole point of the show in the beginning was I wanted to make something that people felt that they could be a part of, and that was why we chose reality TV. Next slide, please. One more. Next slide, yeah. Yep. So you saw the video of Sanma Food Revolution, and that came about through two contestants coming to me and saying, you know, we want to do something on the ground in the villages. And the television series has kind of energized that. And that was in collaboration with the Asia Foundation. So now we're talking to people in Tonga and Fiji about doing the same. And the Vanuatu guys want to add medical diagnostics to their things. They have huge turnouts at every event they've done. They've done 40 of these, what they call spectacles. And they're also looking at disaster relief, so that, you know, creating a local food disaster relief rather than a kind of a white rice disaster relief system. Next slide, please. We were supported by the Australian and New Zealand governments, and we have been until this point. And they commissioned a study. And one more click, please. So one of the things that came out of the study after 2 years was that there'd been an incredible shift in eating habits in each country, and my co-hosts are going to tell you what those shifts look like. So this is the difference between people who had engaged with the Pacific Island Food Revolution, either watching TV or engaging with us on social media, and those who hadn't. Next slide, and there's a video on the next slide.
The report found an improvement in better eating habits in Fiji by 33%. Tosoviti.
In Vanuatu, we experienced 38% of improvement in the way that the people eat. This is after watching Pacific Island Food Revolution. This is real impact. Vanuatu, go, 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 itaf tumas.
Oh, the Telsey. You better move over, honey, because in Samoa, we clocked in a staggering 146% improvement in the way we eat. Woo!
Oh, move over, all of you. That's nothing. In Tonga, we found 262% improvement in the way people eat. Say what? In other words, people who watches us nearly 3 times likely to choose local, healthy food. But then again, we all know that Tonga is the best.
Next slide, please. So these are small shifts in the way people are eating, but it's like taking a big ship that's moving in a bad direction and moving it a little bit to the left. We found an average of 80% of Pacific people are watching the television or engaging on social media, and 42% of them have made some change in the way they eat. But the most important part to me was it was change in the way that they thought about local food. And I always, you know, we talk about food and the development agenda associated, but I just want to remind us that food is not just that. It's really close to people's hearts, it's identity. And I always say the story of the food is the story of the people. And I want to play in the next slide a video where the contestants often get caught up in who's going to win. And my co-host in Fiji, Dr. Johnny, wanted to remind them of what they were actually doing. Play the video, thanks.
This is before we are going to do the final announcement. If I could just share a few words with you before we move on. I teamed up with Robert several years ago because of the crisis that we are facing at the Ministry of Health. I felt that we are at the bottom of a cliff and we are at the receiving end for a lot of these unhealthy habits. We did a small study and we found out that we were amputating 1 in every 12 hours, diabetics. And that was diabetes alone. We're talking about cancer and heart attacks and all the NCDs that are coming. We know we are competing against, you know, processed foods and good marketing and a lot of money poured into that. One thing I shared with Robert was, if I go into the village today, an old lady serves me fresh fish and roro and tapioca, they will apologize to me for serving me that food. And he didn't believe me. I said, well, we can go today to any village in Fiji. That was the positioning of our food the way I saw it, and I didn't like it. And I told him, we have to change that, you know? We have to change that, because it means a lot. We shouldn't be looking down at our food. That's why I'm part of this revolution. I'm emotional about it, and I'm happy that I'm emotional about it, because I know I'm representing a lot of people who are actually facing more hardship and struggles because of that. And your participation means the world. You standing up and coming to this show. It's a competition, yes, it is. But it's much more than that. We are trying to elevate ourselves, our culture, what we are good at. Superfoods. This changes a lot. The platform of health for our country. And I want you to know that. Don't take it lightly. And if you come out of here and you don't make it to the finals, know that you have contributed immensely to the health of this nation just by taking part. I wanted to share that with you because I feel it's the voice of those people that are lying in our hospitals, struggling with lack of resources. And you know very well the struggles because you come from that, you represent that too. And irrespective of what happens today, I hope that you will take that with you. Thank you.
Next slide, please. Next slide. And of course, food is not just about health. It's not just about climate change. It sits across almost every sector. Part of the struggle that I have is that the ministries and the development agencies are divided into climate change and health and tourism development, etc. And food sits across all of that. But I haven't found an easy way to kind of convene across all those spaces. Next slide, please. And I guess I call it a revolution and I ask, whose revolution is it? Next slide and a video, the final video.
This is our revolution.
It's our revolution.
This is our revolution.
It's our revolution.
This is our revolution. This is our revolution.
Our revolution.
This is our revolution.
This is
our revolution.
We're all in this together, and we can get through this together. The revolution begins at home.
Thank you. We can close the PowerPoint down.
This is our
So much, Robert.
Yes, there we are.
Okay.
Thank you.
An amazing presentation, and that part where the gentleman was in tears and saying that this is more than just food and a reality show. I think that was very powerful. But I'm going to get comments from you. What do you think?
Well, I do agree because a lot of people, they see food and relate it to disease, and it's there with Ministry of Health alone. So they do not look beyond that it's everybody's business.
I think
Sarah,
that,
what do you think?
I agree. I became a little bit moved. I was actually trying not to look too much at the screen so that I wouldn't start crying. I think this was such a great example of working with culture so that we can get back to our roots, not try to force any massive cultural changes on people, instead really going back to what our cultures used to be.
Yeah, and I think thank you, Robert, so for joining us. It's always amazing to have you on a panel and sharing what you're doing. And I hope that after this webinar, we'll have a chance to talk offline and think about how else the World Health Organization can work with you, the amazing work that you're doing. So we have limited time, but I do think we have time for some questions. And the first question I have here was not related to Robert's presentation, but it's about mental health issues and saying that mental health issues increased rapidly during the pandemic. How does this influence other NCDs and obesity? And can you give an example of how a better understanding of the link between NCDs and other contextual factors can help inform more effective responses? That's a long one, but I'm going to ask Dr. Wanga to answer that.
Thank you. I guess during COVID, you have to stay, indoors. So that in itself, it stopped us from going out, especially children going to school. So there's a lot of limitations, and this is one of the factors that contribute to a lot of issues that are social issues that are related to families, related to children, and even mothers at home. We have been forced to stay within the boundary of our home. And this has contributed a lot to mental health. Unfortunately, there is not a lot of support to talk things over. And we take things for granted that, okay, because of COVID, we have to stay indoors. We did not realize how it affects the health of individuals. I'm talking about children here. I'm talking about women. I'm talking about men. I'm talking about everyone. It has taught a lot of lessons to us. And to me, one of the lessons learned is something that's a gap in itself, how we approach mental health. So do we have enough support services that we could refer people to? Well, people may talk about it. It's just the way they act. Some men may be leaving their homes and trying and socialize with others, sitting around a bowl of traditional kava, or look for where they can buy alcohol and enjoy themselves. So the rest of the families are left behind. And this has really affected a lot of people.
Yeah, I was going to ask Robert, cooking and gardening, I mean, the literature is very well established on how important that is for mental health. But Robert, you may have some examples of how the revolution has made people happier.
I can tell you some of the feedback that we had was that it just made people happy because they saw themselves in a very positive light and their food culture in a very positive light. And it reminded me that a lot of the nutrition campaigns that I'd seen were often deficit-based. Don't do this, don't have that. And whereas we were saying, look at all this beautiful stuff you can have, and it's you. It's from your culture. So there was a very positive spark came out of that. And I feel the same. I feel like we all need to work together, because I'm not a nutritionist or a scientist or an educator, but I've got this great machine that gets people excited. And all of you know that that's the hard bit, that we can tell people about what to eat and what not to eat till we're blue in the face, but how do we get them to do it? And it's about, for us, it's been about having that fun, hilarious, entertaining way of engaging the community.
Yeah, Robert, there's a question here for you. Do you think that the revolution brought men and women together in the community and, what should I say, created more equity?
I don't know that I can answer that. I know that I was really amazed by the responses to men around cooking. And often we had men on the show who are not really used to cooking. We had one episode where we worked with UNICEF for them to cook to the first 1,000 Days campaign. In other words, make food for baby. And a couple of the
Right.
men reflected that they'd never cooked for their children before. They always left it to the woman. And they were quite emotional saying this. And that I was happy to see that because, of course, the emotional hooks are really important as well. And the emotion part of it that you saw with Dr. Johnny just then, that moves it out of the clinical and into the heart.
Robert, there's another question here about disaster relief. So we do know that this is a sort of sore point for disasters where people send you like sacks of wheat or something that you can't eat. But you were saying that you have an approach to disaster relief that is nutritious and culturally appropriate.
We're in early days of that, and that's coming out of Sanma Food Revolution. The video you saw before I spoke, they are talking to us about, because they're going into communities like far-flung communities, they're talking about developing a local food response that includes local agriculture and other seedlings, et cetera, to kind of circuit break that thing of dropping off foods that maybe perpetuate bad health after a disaster.
Right. Thank you so much, Robert. And we know that some of the food that's distributed during disasters, or a lot of it is processed and high in salt and really bad for people who have diabetes or hypertension. Unfortunately, we're out of time. And I'd just like to thank you, Robert, for being with us, and hope that at some point in the future, we can meet again and talk offline a little bit about how we can collaborate. And so thank you so much for that. And I'm going to ask Dr. Wanga and Sarah to just give your parting messages for our audience. Go ahead.
Yes, so thank you very much. We've learned a lot from the food revolution and what we've learned from COVID. So it's time to go back to our culture. And we are rich with all the food in the culture. So we have to try and work around our preferences, food preferences. And let's teach our young ones that it's important for us to go back into reviving work on the culture, the food culture that we have. You know, some young people are saying, "Oh, our culture is out of date. It's old fashioned. Our food is bad." But it's important that perception need to be corrected. That our food is always be the best. Thank you.
Sarah.
Thank you. I think today we talked a lot about personal choices. We talked about family choices. We even talked about communities. And one thing that we didn't touch on so much is really society and the impact that society has on the availability of choices that we can make. So my parting message is one that we've asked individuals and said, you can do better. We've said that families can do better. I think our big message is also that society can do better about making healthy choices available to us.
Okay, and on that note, we have to say goodbye on behalf of the group on data strategy and innovation at the World Health Organization. This is Susie Mercado saying, see you next time. I think we have a list of other webinars that are coming up. Are we pulling that up on the screen right now, or? You are? Okay, there we go. So we are going to talk about climate ready and responsive health systems, transformative primary health care, pandemic prevention, preparedness and response, and health technology to address health inequity. Oh, very exciting time coming forward. I'd like to thank the team who's been working behind the scenes from what we call DSI, Data Strategy and Innovation at the World Health Organization. And we'll see you next time. So take care of your health. No one else is going to do it for you. See you.
Thank you.
Yeah.